The idea of a pantomime emerged in 1946, in the summer of 1946. The Christmas before, there'd been a Christmas party organised by the employees through what was the General Welfare Council of the Works. They had as many as 3,000 children coming here. It was quite a big event for them. The war was over and it was in a victory celebration. The following year they decided they wanted to do something else, and they decided on a pantomime eventually. Now, this wasn't a particularly easy thing to do at the time because the war was over, but rationing was still in place. And also there were huge shortages of things. Also, they made a decision that only employees will take part in that pantomime. So there was a restriction in terms of the cast. But throughout the summer of 1946, they had these auditions, and they selected Stella Yonder was the principal girl, and Mary Lanford the principal boy. Right. Gwyneth Jones was also in there, and she became. She had a long association with the pantomime. So the show went up on the 16th of December 1946, and it went up in the Palace Theatre, Ebbw Vale. It's no longer there, but it was a prodigious building opposite Christ Church. It had all the attributes of a musical hall theatre, and on the first showing, nearly 900 kids were there, all lined up along Church Street.
I think part of the reason why they took it on as a pantomime was because it is such a big logistical effort to clear the coal mill out. And of all the pack sheets, they had to put all these pack sheets somewhere and then put all the trestles down and the chairs and the catering. It must have been a mammoth task, you know. But obviously, they couldn't do that every year.
No, that's a good point.
It couldn't be done every year, so they had to think, how are we going to entertain the children at Christmas?
So that's how it started virtually. But it was still a big event to organise, wasn't it? The pantomime.
It did absolutely.
But they had plenty of people who volunteered.
I think they learned lessons from the actual party they put on, because they had to bus the children in then, and they had to have all these people there as stewards, organising the children. So basically they had the idea of what they were going to do for the pantomime.
Because we didn't see that first pantomime. No. It was Little Red Riding Hood, and it was the only production in the 36 years of its history that was performed. But I went to a pantomime in 1953, and I had something of the experience of that first night.
Yeah. I think that what it was, you had to become a certain age to have a ticket, didn't it?
7 to 15, I think it was. Yes, 7 to 15. I know the first show, it was, tickets were going for 2 and 6 for the balcony, and 1 and 6 for the stalls.
Yeah, I was in the stalls.
That was in the stalls, yeah. But the atmosphere in there, with 800 children in there, was absolutely electric. Yeah. And we must remember too that this is probably one of the very first time these children had the experience of music theatre.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when they went in there, I mean, there must have been a din. Yeah. I know I can remember it, and I was captivated by it all, because once the spotlights came on, there was red curtains in the place, and the sort of lights dimmed down. The orchestra, as it was, they had an orchestra, struck up those first chords. We were lost in a land of make-believe.
There was always a certain magic about it.
That's right, yeah.
You go in there and, like you said, the lights would be on, and all of a sudden the curtain would go up and the bright. You always remember the dancers.
That's right.
Lighting up the stage.
Well, I mean, I fell in love with the principal girl there.
Well, we all did.
I mean, but I never dreamt that then 15 years later, that I would be on stage with you.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. But going back to Mary Langford, now Mary lived in our street, and to see Mary the day after the pantomime, like I was an idol, like when
well, of course it was. Of course it was. And these particular people were celebrities in the town.
Well,
I mean, they couldn't go down the town without being recognised. No. Oh, and incidentally, one important thing as a spin-off of that pantomime was this, that those kids who were in hospital who couldn't go to it, the cast actually dressed up in their costumes and went to Ebbw Vale Hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been wonderful for them because they were in hospital over Christmas.
Well, exactly.
So this was a real fillip for them.
A real treat, you know, when everybody went, and of course they sang the songs from the pantomime, and they done their little sketches as well, and it worked, a treat. Yeah.
We should record though that that although it was put on by employees for employees' children, it was only a week initially, and then they changed to a fortnight when the venue was changed to the Lever Hall. One man who I think you would agree, Huey, who made a huge contribution to those pantomimes, after all there were 36 of them, was Bill Adams. Bill produced 16 pantomimes. In fact, he was the heartbeat of the pantomime.
He was, yeah.
And through the difficult years of the 80s when the Works was suffering, you know, from all the cutbacks, Bill kept the show on the road virtually. He was Mr. Producer.
Yeah.
And
he took it on every year, and it must have been really difficult.
Oh, it was, yes. Yeah. The idea of casting the show became a huge problem because there was no longer, they couldn't stick to the ideal of having employees only. It was just employees, because the Works had been reduced in workforce anyway from 12,000 to
and of course, you know, they didn't have the backing of the Works like they used to. You know, like the carpenter shop made the scenery, and the painters, they done all the decorating. They didn't have these guys around.
Indeed not.
So
no, they didn't.
It was all down to volunteers, and my word, it worked.
Well, the first show I did was in 1963, Robinson Crusoe. I have to confess, I was dragged into it, kicking and screaming. I didn't particularly want to do the show, but we were taken over there by David Harris, who was the musical director, and also the voice coach in the youth club. Yeah. So that was the first show that I did, and Huey was in that show because we were part of a boy band called the Melody Four.
Like I say, I can recall that. We went down just to practice, I think. And Neil came along now and said, oh, by the way, we're in the pantomime next week.
Yes.
You were joking. We haven't got any numbers ready. With that, we went over to the big house, as we call it, or the Works Club, and we'd done about an hour's rehearsal on the numbers we were going to do in the pantomime.
Yeah.
And that was it.
The Beatles numbers.
The Beatles numbers.
Because they were popular at the time.
And we done the numbers that we were all very familiar with.
Both of us then took part in the pantomimes that followed in various parts. We had comedy roles mostly.
I was a broker's man myself. What were you, buddy?
Well, I was Silly Billy and Idle Jack, and I did take part of the Dame once or twice.
It was an excellent experience.
It was.
But it was all down to Neil Jones.
Oh, yes.
He had the bug for the theatre, Neil, and he dragged us kicking and screaming into it.
And he became a professional entertainer afterwards. Yeah. But he wanted to know some funny stories, and one of the ones which sticks out in my mind was in those early performances. We had a chap in the show. He's chairman of the concert party called Eddie Jones. In this particular scene, it was an underwater scene, replicating Davy Jones's locker.
Yeah, that's correct.
Eddie Jones was dressed up, and he had all this elaborate costumes, and he had this terrible green paint all over him. He looked a monster. He was supposed to be a sea monster. Anyway, he jumps out onto the stage to deliver his line, which was something like, I am Davy Jones, and I dwell underneath the sea. And a little boy in the front row got up and said, no, he said, you're Eddie Jones, and you're from Dukestown, Tredegar.
Aye, that's true. I always remember it. That was in Robinson Crusoe again. In the middle of the stage was the mast of the boat. And our opening scene was we were sweeping the decks. So we sweeping the decks now, and we come to the post, the mast, which is stuck in the middle of the stage. What did Neil Jones do? Lifted the mast up, brushed the dust underneath and put it back down.
Oh, that was Neil. I mean, he was an outrageous character and a nightmare to be on the stage with because he never followed the script.
No.
Outrageous ad-libber, wasn't he?
Yeah.
We knew him, of course, but others who had to share the stage with him were terrified.
Exactly. Another scene in Rob's Crusoe again was we had to tie up, Friday.
Man Friday.
Man Friday, we had to tie him up. Well, every night now we tied him up, and he got tighter and tighter, the ropes. And he had to break himself free from these ropes and sing his song. Yeah. Was it Bali High, if I remember?
Bali High from, South Pacific, wasn't it? Yeah.
And anyway, they tied him up so tight one night, he couldn't get it. He had to sing Bali High when he's tied to this post.
Yes.
Poor Graham Daniel, from Tredegar. Yeah.
One other particular thing I remember, Hughie, because you were there as well, and when this happened, one of the shows, I had the part of the dame in it, and we did it in the fortnight because when the shows were on in the Lever Hall, it was a fortnight because they could only put 350 people in the audience. And on the Thursday night, Bill Adams, the producer, said to me, "Liz is not very well, Liz Spackman." I said, well, it turns out that Liz had a virus and there was no way she could do the following shows, and there were 3 shows left: Friday, Saturday matinee and a Saturday evening performance. What was Bill going to do? Well, he said, there's only one person who can do this show. He said, we'll step into Liz's shoes because we didn't have the luxury of having any understudies.
No.
It was somebody who'd been in the show 10 years previously as a principal boy, and that was Gwyneth Jones.
Yes.
I thought it would be an unmitigated disaster to bring somebody into the show and expect her to perform just like that. But she came and she had the script, I know for a fact, midday on the Friday afternoon. The boss wouldn't let her go until 4 o'clock. No. She went straight up into the Lever Hall where she practiced for 2 hours. Yeah. And she had to sort of ad-lib her way through some of the scenes in the first show. But by the second one, she was great. And the third one, she was outstanding. Outstanding. I shall always remember that. Gwyneth came back after 10 years to do that and showed the consummate professional she was.
Oh, yeah. And she was excellent. She did a wonderful job. But there was some wonderful characters in there. I remember doing one scene where we had to do an Egyptian dance. The sand dance. And we had these little skirts on.
Oh, yeah.
So first night now, we're doing our little bit, and what happened? The skirt come off, didn't it? And we had to carry on and holding the skirt and doing the dance at the same time. Yes. We thought it was so funny, we'd try and keep it in, but it never worked.
The same, it was so natural the way you did it first time.
Exactly, it never worked, so we dropped it. Yeah, it never really worked.
Well, I always had problems with heights. In fact, sometimes I can't even look at shots on the television with heights. I can't go near the edge of anything. Well, of course, they had this scene where I was supposed to be put on a spaceship and taken up into the gods. And what they did, they built a platform for me, like a swing, which I had to sit on, and they haul up the rocket up into the gods up there. Well, I was absolutely petrified. Not only was I petrified, but I was awful uncomfortable because this thing was stuck underneath me here, and I had a whole lot of grim death.
Yeah.
And I was yanked up in there, and I was looking down 25 feet below, and it wasn't an experience I wanted to repeat. I had to do it for 13 performances. Yeah. Of course, they made my life a misery. Those people backstage, they knew I was afraid of heights, so they made it worse for me.
They tried to persuade him. It was one night that so-and-so turned up, and he was the big guy.
Oh, I know.
To jump on the rope.
I know.
Vernon Caldwell, I think his name was.
Yes, Vernon, yes.
And Barry was worried. He was a worried man.
I was really worried. Yeah. yes, it was. Anyway, I came through it all right. And, of course, it was great camaraderie backstage, wasn't it?
Wonderful.
I mean, they would never have allowed us to do what we did then because we were all ensconced downstairs underneath the stage. There was only one way in, wasn't it?
Exactly.
You couldn't get out on the bit. No. There was all the orchestra. And
well, you had the piano against the window, so you couldn't get out that way.
So we were underneath the stage.
Yeah.
And
like I say, they wouldn't have allowed it today because, like I say, there's one way down and one way out, and that was it.
But we have some good fun underneath there.
They used to have a beer kitty as well under there, didn't they?
Yeah, they had some ale, some ale.
And there's one boy by the name of Jim Perry, poor old Jim. And he could drink a drop, Jim, can he? I think he drank his quarter in the first night, Jim.
Yes.
And I think that people in Ebbw Vale used to look forward to this.
I think so.
Fortnight a year,
it was the start of Christmas. I mean,
it was, yeah.
I mean,
but not only for the people, for the cast as well.
Oh yes,
we all have a run up to Christmas.
It was all part of it. We felt that Christmas had begun once the pantomimes. I think the people that came to the shows felt that as well. When the kids came, it was a treat for them, pantomime. But and of course, it was an experience for them. For the 36 years it was in existence, it did a marvelous job, I think.
I remember going to the pantomime when I was in Nipper, and the way they used to distribute the toys and all the presents. Father Christmas would come on stage and he'd have a mirror, right? And he'd put the spotlight then on this mirror. And this mirror then would go around the audience and stop on a particular child.
Yes.
But people began to get a bit wary of this. They thought, they know where so-and-so is sitting. So they must have thought then, we got to bring something in for the rest of the children.
I never had a toy.
I never had one.
I never had a bag of sweets either.
I had a bag of sweets because I think it was about, my last pantomime was about 57, 58. Must have been 58.
Before you?
Yeah, before I was too old and kicked out.
Too old, kicked out, yes.
Much to my disgust.
Yes, I did a few in the 50s. But yes, it was always great fun. And of course, when the kids came on these buses down, their parents took them down to the collection point. They were put on the coach. But of course, you can imagine what it was like when they arrived on the scene then, because these kids were all excited. I mean, and there were some devils among them, wasn't there?
Yeah, God.
But
none of them are angels.
No,
not all of them anyway.
So they had to marshal the event quite strictly, and sometimes because they could get out of control.
But yes, it did have a tremendous effect on Ebbw Vale at that time, because I think, it was all part and parcel of entertaining the children and winding them up ready for Christmas.
Ready for Christmas, yes.
That's what it is.
Yes. The last show was 1982, and there was a pantomime on the drawing board for 1983 called Aladdin. And there was a new producer, Bill Adams, his last show was Robinson Crusoe. He'd done 16 and he felt he'd done his lot.
Yeah.
Right? So somebody else took over, and unfortunately they just couldn't cast the show. No. Tickets were printed for it, but they made a decision then in November that they didn't have enough to fulfill the performance, so they postponed it until 1983. To the February 1983, but then it just simply faded away, and then never did another one. No. It was at the time when the Works there were lots of things going on at the time in Ebbw Vale, but the Works departments were closing, people were leaving the Works. They just didn't have the commitment, or couldn't have the commitment to come and perform for 2 weeks. I mean, some of them were just coming straight off the shifts, going straight into the show.
Exactly. So you could say that the show's finished with Bill Adams.
Well, indeed, sadly, yes. He was the driving force. And when he decided to to
call it a day.
call it a day. His last curtain call.
Yeah.
That was, we didn't know at the time, but that final curtain was the final curtain for the pantomime.
That was the end of it.
Mm.